Thank you for tuning into White Centipede Noise Podcast. Please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. This podcast is made possible by viewer and listener support. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider supporting it at patreon.com/White Centipede Noise. White Centipede Noise is a label and mail order based in Germany, releasing top quality noise on tape, CD, and vinyl. White Centipede Noise is also the premier EU-based distributor of international noise. Visit whitecentipedenoise.com to see available label releases and weekly distro updates. Hello and welcome to White Centipede Noise Podcast. Today, my guest is a guy from the Minneapolis scene that I originate in, Harsh Noise Maniac. We're going to use an abbreviated version of his name today. Please welcome of Body CARVE.
What's up, Oscar?
Good morning. So welcome. Thank you for being with me.
Thanks for having me.
Like I said, we're both from Minneapolis, or at least, you're from the area, and we met in Minneapolis in the early 2010s. And I believe we met at the Rat Hole, which was a punk house in South Minneapolis, where a lot of noise shows were happening. And the reason they were happening primarily is because Grant Richardson lived there. A lot of times punk houses are pretty separate and pretty kind of strict. They stick to punk music, but yeah, Grant, was kind of our in ticket. So yeah, there were a lot of noise shows there. What was the importance of the Rat Hole for you, and how did you find out about it in the first place?
Yeah, the Rat Hole was fucking awesome. The Rat Hole is the first place I saw a noise show. And I guess there's like a whole thing about that, like me going from like hardcore and like whatever I was getting into and like being into noise. And then there was a noise show there and it was like carryover. But the Rat Hole, when I was getting into the DIY scene, going to a bunch of like hardcore punk shows, it was like this like kind of like gutter place, and I, when I first started going there, I didn't know Grant. I'd go there because there was a hardcore show or a punk show or some touring band or something, I'd meet up with friends, but I didn't know anybody that lived there. It was just like, to me, it was just like a punk house, a venue where I would go, and it's partly just because of my style and my situation where, I wasn't living in the city and I wasn't like super tight with a bunch of like the punks and like in bands and stuff. So I was really kind of coming like as an audience member, as just like a person to like go and like see these shows. And I got really, into the idea of just this kind of DIY thing, this kind of secret of like, oh, ask a punk, and everybody knew where the Rat Hole was and people just, partying. And so it was like, I was always really, excited about this idea of the DIY mindset of like booking your own shows and having these like cool events in this kind of like nasty basement. And then, so it's like I'd meet people, but then I started getting into noise. It's like, my whole like trajectory of like going from like this type of music and like getting more and more extreme. And then what was it? Like my first noise show there, it was like I was getting into these like noise bands and like I guess there's like how I'd gotten into them and like figuring out local stuff. But yeah, like went to a show because this like hardcore show got canceled somewhere else. And then there was some show in the Rat Hole and it was like some Illinois bands that I don't even remember, but Nod and Breaking the Will played. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'd already known a little bit about Nod because I'm like, oh, this is some guys, like shit sounds cool online or whatever. And so my buddy that I was going to go to this show with, I was like, hey, this show got shut down because it was like winter or snowy or something. And so they canceled, I think. And then we went to the show at the Rat Hole and I was like, my fucking brain melted. I was just like, I was already listening to noise, but I was just like this shit's in the fucking city. This was so brutal. And like Nod, this is like before Nod put out the Devolve tape. So it was like when he was a lot more like forward, like, you know, aggressive PE style.
Yeah.
And Breaking the Will, it was like before he put out Normalization tape, or maybe I think he'd done something before then with like the Vacuum Split tape or whatever. But I was just like, oh my God, you know, it was like, and then it was like, you know, I'm at this show and I'm like, I didn't know anybody except my friend. And I was like, he was there as like a tag along, and I was there as like, oh my God, it's like ripping my head open of like, this is the best shit. I love this shit already. And I was like, this is here. And this is like so intense and so loud. And like, obviously Breaking the Will at that time and like Not at that time was like exactly what I like was like excited about. It was like super high energy, perfectly executed. And just, I bought the 3-inch CDR Nod Custodian collab before it was announced out. So it was like, he had it and I was like, oh, Custodian. I heard about him from the fucking, you know, Andrew Nolan blog, the Endless Blockade dude, you know, it's like partly how I was getting into local noise. Cause he, you know, see, I'm like getting distracted, but like,
no,
he did a split, Joshua Norton Cabal split CD with Juyo.
Yeah.
And then I was going to these punk shows, you know, like at the fucking Triple Rock or wherever, and like the Medusa and stuff, you know, the nasty old Medusa.
Yeah.
And Juyo did like, they had like this like punk night, and then Juyo did like the intermissions for one of them.
Cool.
Maybe it was two of them, but then it was like, I was like, holy shit, Juyo's so awesome. Like I'm like, you know, into like sludge metal and like power violence and like hardcore and stuff. And then Juyo was like this kind of like super heavy ambient, but like is like kind of harsh, but like still like restrained and kind of like textures. You know, I wasn't like fully on ready for like a lot of extra stuff, but it was like, that was like a nice jumping point and connection to that. And then, but it's like, I was like obviously into power violence and sludge metal and like black metal and all this stuff like people would be in that time. And I'm reading this, you know, Andrew Nolan's blog about like different bands and different like, cause I'm like, ooh, Iron Lung, you know, Endless Blockade and like all this like old stuff.
Were you a Bastard Noise and Man is a Bastard fan at that time?
Yeah. I mean, I was like stuff I was really into. I mean, Bastard Noise and Man is a Bastard, like I was, you know, definitely a fan of. I was, you know, more of a fan of like Crossed Out and, you know, Mind Eraser and shit like that. So it's like, but Man is a Bastard being there. And then I'm like, oh, they turned into the Bastard Noise. And even in the Man is a Bastard stuff have these like weird noisy tracks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, this is like kind of weird. And like, but it really fits really well. And then obviously even as like a newer bands like Endless Blockade and Iron Lung having like these like noise tracks and like noise in the songs. Yeah. That like was this like perfect mix, and obviously they were super tight, and I was just like, okay, this is really cool. Like this adds like a whole new element, and so this idea of like, anyway, so like not like, the questions about the Rat Hole or whatever, but all that stuff like connected, and like I go to this show at the Rat Hole, and it's like it's all like coming together, and then I'm like emailing you, you know, like about stuff like meet you, and I'm like, hey, you know, trying to get some stuff from White Centipede, and I'm emailing John from Custodian when he still lived in Milwaukee, you know, before he moved to Minneapolis. And then I'm like, you know, trying to get some stuff from him. And I know I emailed Sam or bought some stuff from Sam, just like when he was like PayPal style. Yeah. And, you know, he hits me back up and is like, whoa, you live in, I was living in Woodbury at the time. You live in Woodbury? Yeah. Do you go to shows? Like, what's up, man? Like, hey, look for me. Come to the show. Look for me. I got a big red beard. Like, and it was super welcoming rather than just like, here's your shit, you know? Yeah. You know, or just like mail to me. It's like, which is something I do too, you know? Yeah. Some guy added me on Instagram the other day, somebody I didn't know. And I was like, oh shit, Minneapolis. Like, what's up? You do tape collage? And like, he's like, oh yeah. And it's just like one of those, anyway, it's like, Sam shows the Rat Hole.
That's Sam's, you know, that's really to his credit. He goes out of his way to invite and welcome people, you know, especially if he knows you're like local. He did the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It was super cool. And I mean, I was like really grateful. I was really grateful to be like, have that connection. And even if I was not going to talk to him at all at a show because I was way too, you know, anxious or introverted, I would have, you know, and not just because I didn't know him, you know, sure. And I kind of felt like I was like, I'll just sit on my phone in the corner and, you know, pretend I'm texting someone while I'm like embarrassed to be here by myself. But like, I really have to see this music because it's so crazy. But yeah, it's like the Rat Hole. And like, even at the time, like other DIY spots, basements, it's like the Medusa,
Yeah.
you know, even like all that shit was so good. And, you know, obviously then I met Grant like personally, and I was like, you know, he's the shit, not just like an amazing like artist and, you know, somebody who I've been like a huge fan of ever since before I met him.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, obviously, you know, solid fucking dude.
Yeah. Solid guy who has a ton of knowledge and is so talented in so many areas. I mean, I remember just being blown away, like going over his house and seeing his bedroom. It's like full of like so many different types of projects, like soldering. There's a mastering station. There's like, you know, tons of guns. Like he has so many different, like really intense interests. And he's like, then he's going to some, like he's doing some online, you know, training online, like electrical engineering course at like an MIT, at like MIT or something like that. And, you know, just the entire, just such an active guy, but at the same time, he's at like every show and he's like partying every night. Like, it's just like,
Grant's a freak.
How does he do it? You know? Yeah. And now, I mean, and that was in the early days. And since then, I mean, he's, I think just developed even more. He's probably like, maybe he's like gotten more focused in what he's doing and maybe less partying or something like that, but he's still like, he's such a, I mean, he's become like the go-to guy mastering noise. His work has become incredibly refined as Nod. It's been, you know, it's gone so far from the early days, this really raw, like crust, like he was like a crusty dude. He was a punk.
Yeah.
He was like from the crust punk scene. You know, that's still him, but his aesthetic and his sound was very like raw and crust punk style. Like he had these like handmade electronics, and then now where he is doing this really like cavernous, restrained, like perfectly engineered, I guess death industrial. I don't know what you would call it, but I mean, he's had an amazing like development too, which is also super cool to see.
Yeah, it's interesting how he's kind of like gone from having, it's like still maintained, like it's not like there's like kind of eras of Nod or whatever, but like it's like as you look at the catalog or whatever, it's like a decent progression that doesn't seem weird. His aesthetic has like shifted, and like obviously concepts, it's like everything's very, it used to kind of just be a lot more like almost like this is a song and this is like all you know, almost kind of like that, like this is like, you know, these are songs that I'm like performing, and now it's a little bit more just like, you know, cinematic and kind of like this huge conceptual thing. And I have a new lathe that he did, or like the local label put out. And I texted him and I was like, dude, this shit's crazy. Like, is this a one-off? And he's like, you know, I think this might be kind of future material, but it's like, he's always kind of like moving in this like direction, and it's super cool. And it's obviously like being close and stuff with him, and kind of hear more of like the concepts. It's not just, I don't just get the records and then like piece it together. It's like, I'm seeing it develop, and it's, there's no like, no forcing. He's just like, hits me up and he's like, hey, I'm going to go try to hit this sewer. Like, what are you doing? And it's like, shit.
He gets it done. I mean, he gets it done like right away. I remember when I was there a couple of years ago for Christmas, he was talking about the record that came out on Cloister, Subterranean Rights, and was explaining to me how he goes down to the sewers with generators and amps and synthesizers and all of his gear in the canoe and records that shit. And I was just kind of like, I mean, it's not that I didn't believe him, but I was just kind of like, all right, like, sure. Like, I don't know how that sounds or how that works out. And then like several months later, the record comes out and it's like, oh, it sounds perfect. It's like really extremely well done. And he's got photo documentation of it all. It's like, he does everything so thoroughly and so seriously. It's insane. And like I said, I'm always just my mind is always blown also just by his, like I said, the way he balances his lifestyle and his personality and all of his interests, and still is so productive at such a high level of so many different things. It's he's got a new job herding goats now, apparently.
Yeah, that's right. The goat shit. It's so crazy.
I haven't asked him about that. He'll be on the show soon for sure. Which I can't wait, because I mean, there's a lot about him I don't know. I mean, I know him as a friend, but always just kind of like as a friend, like such a busy dude that's like always associated with like projects and like, or things that are going on or shows, you know, like, and I can't wait to like actually sit down with him and like find out more about all that shit specifically.
Yeah, he's a true maniac. He just like he gets these interests, and it's not like a passing thing. It's like, you know, sometimes he just like gets so like focused, and a lot of times those like obsessions don't go away with him. It's like, so it's like he just got all these things, but not in like some disorganized way. It's like he like, and it's not like some forced way where it's like, oh, I'm going to budget time for each of these things. It's like he just kind of like, it's like the seasons or something. It's like sometimes he's like into this thing or like really focused, and it's like he spends his time like digging in, and then it's like now it's time for this thing, and it's like, but it's all there like circling in and out. So yeah, Grant's a shit. He really is like, I know, I think it was like the interview with Sam, you were like, he's like a fountain of knowledge, and he really is. And it's like, you know, I think, you know, you talked about like people like the idea of like gatekeepers or whatever, you know, and it's like Grant's like never been like that. It's like anybody who's like has a question or like wants a little help or, you know, when I mean, Grant mastered the first track that I did that was ever on anything like 10 years ago or whatever. Cause I was like, oh, your shit sounds good. My shit sounds stupid. Like, could you help me? I'll give you some money. And we weren't like buddies, like buddies at the time, you know, it's like we knew each other, but he's just like super helpful and like not going to sit there and, you know, cross his arms and be like, you've got to earn your way here. It's like, hey dude, you want to talk about this? Like, what's up? You know?
Yeah.
So
that's really cool. So that, you know, that leads me to my next question, but what role has the Minneapolis scene like had in terms of your development as an artist and your, I mean, people in the scene, shows like how has that influenced what you do?
Oh, I mean, it's huge. I mean, as far as sound, I mean, I wouldn't say the local scene or anything has like influenced my sound or, you know, my art itself. But like, as far as like me doing things and participating and like being exposed to things, Sam, you know, when I got into stuff and started going to shows, it was like, I think late 2010, maybe early 2011. It's hard to remember timeline, but like the shit that was happening in the city, and I never went to a Heavy Focus, but like the fact that like it was like mostly Sam and Joe, I think, wasn't it, that did Heavy Focus, or were you involved? I mean,
I wasn't involved.
Regardless. Yeah. So the Heavy Focus stuff, that was, I wouldn't say before my time. I think there was one Heavy Focus where like, I knew about it and I was like, I can't go there. I'm way too anxious. I don't know anybody. I can't just show up. And it was like, you know, definitely one of those things where I kind of felt I would be, which obviously I regret, because, you know, you get Jay Linsky's like footage of that shit and it's like insane. But yeah, just like the fact that there were those shows, and in that time, that was like in the US, it seemed there was like it was, you know, I don't know about the worldwide scene, but the US scene, there was a lot of activity, and Minneapolis, and, you know, there was a lot of stuff going on there, and, you know, people were touring and stuff. You know, I know you guys talked about like Grain Belt tour, and, you know, Custodian was popping up then. And, you know, there was like a lot of people were like becoming more active and putting out a lot of things. And then there went to be like a lull as of like 2012 or whatever. But it was, but there's so much stuff happening, shows coming around. You know, one of the first, you know, shows I played was like in the Rat Hole with Skin Graft and Plague Mother and Shane, Hostage Pageant.
Oh,
you know, and it's like, so it's like they were just on tour. That was like a tour that was like not shocking that it would happen, you know? So it's like, there's like cool stuff that was happening. And so it's like, I'm being exposed to these like new projects, and it's like, oh shit, like, let me buy some stuff from you. And it was like, cause I'm still like in my mind, like very much punk style. Like, oh, I want to like bring money. I can't buy stuff online cause I have no money. I'm broke as fuck constantly, but like I have some cash and I will go to the show and buy some stuff if they have it. And so it's like, I'm getting that stuff there. And just being invited to play shows made me more motivated to be more focused on recording and like crafting stuff. So I suppose it did kind of help that way, because the idea of going and playing, there being like live activity happening and being invited to play stuff was like, made me think more about recording and about sound and about presence. And, you know, whether it was good or bad on my end, it was something that definitely like made me excited to do more and push myself a little more, because there was a lot of really cool shit. Yeah. And, and then, you know, the tourniquet stuff obviously happened, right? You know, Kevin from Transitional Species, like did like the showcase at the Kitty Cat Club and was like that was that 1 month and like you played and I played and like it was like 4 or 5 people every Monday night or whatever. And then it became like the series that he did. And then when he needed to kind of step down because it was just becoming too much, Grant took over and kind of just kept it going. And, you know, the whole like, you know, so then it's like, and then a lot of, at that time, it was like a lot of the punk houses that did basement shows were like kind of stopping doing that. People that were into that were moving away from those houses and it wasn't like a lot of shows. So, but then it's like an easy transition because there's like small bar venues that are like, yeah, whatever. Like, it's not like you had to like pay them $100 or $300 to like get the night. Right. Just like go in there and do a cut and, you know, or the Kitty Cat Club was like, yeah, sure. We'll just do that free thing. And it was, so there's just like a lot of activity. I mean, so much to the point where like, you know, everybody who was doing that stuff, Sam, Kevin, Grant, you know, people were booking shows were almost always really good about trying to get new people to like come out and do stuff, not just show up, but like, oh, you do noise? Like, what's up? Like, when do you want to play? Let me know when you're ready. Like, want to get you on something. Like, you got to play a show. That's the shit. Yeah. And like, that was really cool. And like, a year ago, you know, Gray did some Instagram poll thing, or maybe it was a Noise Extra thing, but something about like, what do you want to hear? What do you want us to talk about or something? And somebody commented and he shared it like, people's setups. And in an asshole moment, some snarky douchebag moment, I was like, they should go to shows. You know, like, this is what I'm going to send him. Gray, being a fucking OG, nice dude, just writes, and we're cool. Like, we chill, we text, we message and stuff. But he was like, not everybody can come from like a cool scene like Minneapolis where there's like cool stuff going on where you can just go to shows. Yeah. And like, you know, and he wasn't like, you know, it wasn't like pat me on the head. It was like just throwing it out there. And I was like, dude, he's totally right. Yeah. It's not like I didn't like go on the Tronics forum and like try to figure out what other people were doing or watch live videos. I didn't like bite anybody's style, but it was like, I was like, whoa, I definitely had this like great benefit of coming up in the Minneapolis scene where like there's a bunch of enthusiastic people who are like, I don't know, really want to use like the word inclusive, but like pretty inclusive as far as like outsiders. They're like, oh, you want to come? Come on. It's not like there's like secret gatekeeping. They're just like, come out, like, you know, be involved in this. And then obviously there's some like, you know, some spicier things that would happen, you know, on the sides, but there was a lot of like, people trying to be like, oh, you're into this? Like, come on, check it out, see what's up. And it was so cool.
Yeah, that's funny. That reminds me of a funny story, actually. That's embarrassing to tell, but when I first got into noise and started hearing it, actually, the Cherry Point was one of the first projects I heard. And it was also a time where there was like this kind of weird art noise scene in Minneapolis. This was like more like 2006, 2007. Sure. And there were all these noise shows where people were like doing kind of goofy stuff and costumes, you know, like, but then I was like at the same time discovering like recorded stuff like the Cherry Point, which was like so harsh. And I was like kind of always hoping that this would be what I saw at these shows, but it usually wasn't. And I was kind of like trying to talk to people like, yeah, like, do you guys listen to the Cherry Point? Like, and people were like, no, no, we don't fuck, like, what's that? I don't know. So I couldn't really figure out how, like, I wanted to know how do you make noise. And I emailed Phil actually like probably 2006 and was like, hey, I'm a fan. Like, can you tell me how to make noise on the most like basic level? And he like politely like curved the email. and it's good. And it's good because I mean, of course, I mean, he probably would have told me maybe like, you know, start with a contact mic, you know, and that's eventually I figured that out, you know, or like, you know, but I was literally on a technical level. I just saw people with these like tables with some like wires going into stuff. And I was like, I have no idea what that is. And I have no idea how to make like weird ass fucked up sounds from just like some boxes, you know? So it was really a mystery to me. And I asked a really dumb question to like my noise hero at the time. So it was just like, everyone has like those kinds of like early moment days. Not everyone likes to admit it, but there we go. There's mine.
Yeah, for sure.
This episode of White Centipede Noise Podcast is brought to you by Ominous Recordings, based in Sweden, a harsh noise peddling underdog label since 2005. Available on CD is the complete discography of Knives, a 2005 harsh noise collab between the Cherry Point and Pedestrian Deposit's John Borges. The threesome slitting 7-inch with the 2020 New York City gig. Also, a reissue of one of the best harsh noise albums ever, Black Leather Jesus Anti, as well as Golden Serenades Fit, and 3 of the Rita reissues, co-released with Phage Tapes. Tapes by Foul, Schizophrenic Genius, and split tape between JSH and Compripritor. Visit www.ominousrecordings.com to get your fix. So, moving on to Body Carve. Well, before we get into Body Carve, you have some other projects that are still active and maybe some earlier ones. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, do you want to go back to the beginning?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, so I was getting into noise, you know, is like something I'd like download from blogs and stuff, you know, because they were like blog spots with MediaFire links and just like downloading all this wild shit. I was in college and like worked in this like AV lab kind of a place. Like, you know, I've always been like kind of technical and stuff, but it's like they were like throwing this mic away that had like an 1/8 inch out or something, or like maybe it was a full one. And I just like bought an adapter at Radio Shack when those existed. But like you know, it's like I'm like experimenting, like in the truest sense of it. Like, oh, I like got this mic and like jammed it in. I didn't have pedals. I like opened up GarageBand and like put on like put on weird effects, and they just started like playing it, and it's like making this like weird like harsh noise kind of stuff, which was like, you know, I'm like, holy shit. And then I'm like, oh my God. And then I'd go to like, I was, you know, like I said, I basically never had money, especially when I was in college, but I'm like, oh, I found like a $20 chorus pedal that had 2 outs. So then it's like feedback loop style, you know, I'm like, oh, I got this piece of shit Lion distortion pedal that sounds like garbage, but I'm going to put it between there. And then like, oh, that's extra nasty. And then I'm like got twiddling knobs and stuff. And then it's like, I had the mic then, and I'm like, ooh, and like, I'm going to just record this and then like do some weird vocals of like being pissed off about little things I'm pissed off about or whatever. And so it's like, then I just had and I had the stupid, my first project was the Thin White Puke, which was like the stupidest fucking name. And it's not like it's like, oh, I don't even like David Bowie, but it was like a David Bowie reference, but I just thought it sounded snotty and dumb. And I was like, this is like puke. And my friend was like, is that like a reference to cum, Thin White Puke? And I was like, dude, that's way cooler than my reason. You know? I mean, I took it all really seriously, but then I think I just stopped for a bit and then refocused. And I was like, I want to do something different, something a little bit more like creeping and like kind of post-mortem style, a little bit more like, you know, Atrex Morgan, like been one of my favorites since I found out about him. Like somehow randomly on a download blog found Mechanic Asphyxia, like, and I was like, holy shit, this is fucking demented. Like, this is like so minimal. And like, I mean, a lot of my early shit kind of sounds like that because I was like, this is all you need, a fucking weird ass line, some vocals that are all affected. And it's like, it's just the most fucked up sound. And I was like, I want to take a step back from this, like aggro, like whatever, like this is on my mind shit to something that's a little bit more crafted and a little bit more like conceptual. Yeah. So then I started Ligature Impression. Yeah. And I mean, I was really happy. I was doing like bigger, like fold out artwork and just some like, you know, kind of pervy, like standard fetish stuff. And that's kind of changed since, you know, it was like what I really wanted. It was like, I think some of my layouts just probably looked like I stole them off of the Rita, which is like not an unfair comparison. You know, it was like just like photos in blocks with like borders and stuff. And I was like, looks like the Dead Body Collection split or whatever, but it's like, whatever. You know, it's like, that's what I was like influenced by the Rita aesthetically, but like wanted to do something different, you know, but anyway, it's like, so I'm like doing that. And then, I remember that was awesome.
In those early days, I think like the Rita, like kind of pumped up that tape, didn't he? Like,
yeah, it was sick. He hit me up. I think it was on,
I don't know if he ordered it from you but he posted somewhere on some forum, but he was like, gave it some big props. And I remember thinking like, wow, cool. Like, I mean, you know, I think with Sam McKinley, one thing, at least for me personally, is that I always take his recommendations very seriously. Like he'll when he really fucks with something, he'll like let it be known. And I'll always, if I can, like try to check it out. Like, you know, so I mean
totally.
that's, I mean, there are a lot of people like that, but there are certain people who, you know, you respect their taste and opinion. Not necessarily that I love everything that he champions, but I at least will like, you know, okay, this is something like worthy of some attention, you know? And I remember seeing that.
Yeah. He's a fucking titan. Dude is one of my favorite, you know, just sonically, aesthetically, as like a consistent project, like all eras of him. You know, some people are like, ballet. And I'm like, dude, I mean, dude's a true maniac and fucking has like bookshelves full of like nasty, they're not nasty, it's all classy shit, but it's like, dude is a real, I mean, it's not like I've been to his house, but he's got stacks of fucking ballet magazines and like books and fucking DVDs of all this shit. It's like, you know, but yeah, he shouted me out, or like hit me up. It was not something I like, it's not unlike, it wouldn't be unlike me to like, cause I've sent him stuff, just like the Guts and Red plastic tape that I did. I sent those to people. Like,
sure.
I don't think I sold more than 1 or 2 of the original 12 I made. I just sent them to people that I thought might like it, because I didn't think it'd be any. I was like, this is kind of bullshit anyway. But like, I sent it to people, and like, he was one. I was just like, hey man, like, what's up? Hope you're doing well. Like, I'd like to send you this tape. And he's like, sure, cool. This is where I'm at still.
Yeah.
But yeah, with the ligature impression stuff, he definitely like hit me up and was like, hey, what's up with this project? And I had a link on Bandcamp because I used Bandcamp in those days. But he was like, can I get a tape? And I was like, hell yeah. And I was like, dude, you could have asked me just to send you one for free, and I would have. Fuck yeah. And he definitely like shouted me out, I think, for my first couple releases. And I met him at Amplified Humans and gave him ligature impression nod split. And he's like, I was like, here, man, good to finally meet you. You know, excited to see you play. Here's this tape we just did. And he's like, oh, let me get you something. And I was like, oh no, it's all good. This is just like handoff. He's like, no. And he gives me the fucking Lust Vessel tape, or what is it? The one he did on Stiff Sanctorum, whatever.
Cool.
But it's just, you know, really nice guy, and shouted me out, and, you know, in those days. And that was huge for me. And I was like, I mean, I didn't like carry that wave or whatever, but it was like really cool to be like, you know, dude was definitely influential for me, and still is, you know, in like a lot of ways, but yeah. But yeah, that project was cool. And I mean, I still probably mess around with it a little bit when I'm, you know, I started doing body carve because I went through like personal stuff, as like had like, you know, shitty things happen in my personal life. It was like for about 2015 and up to, you know, I was like in that time, it was like bad stuff happened. And then like, it was like working on that tape. It took a lot of my energy and thought, and I stopped liking doing that stuff because it was like, seemed like a chore, you know, this didn't seem like something that was like fun. And I know like some of my friends, you know, in the scene or whatever, they're like, oh, they like treating it like a job. And like, it's like, no, you got to do this. And I'm like, that's not how I view this shit. Like, I'm not inspired, and it feels inauthentic to like force myself to sit down and do something when I'm not actually authentically inspired, or like feeling like I need to get something out or do something, or like, oh, I have this idea that's like burning a hole in my brain. It has to be like, I have to do something. Yeah. And, but I just basically stopped doing that. I didn't want to think about that. And I was just listening to a lot of harsh noise. When I finally and I didn't want to listen to any negative music at that point. And then I like started feeling better, and like things were going better for me. Started listening to a bunch of harsh noise tapes, a lot of ones that I just collected over time, and went through like a whole stack of Plague Mother tapes that I bought and traded and like gotten and stuff. And which was like a lot of the harsh noise tapes that I had. And then I'm like downloading more and listening to more, and I'm like, oh fuck, you know, and then like listening to some just nasty junk stuff. And that kind of like formed into, you know, once again, like I played Ligature Impression live with, at the first fest that Grant threw in like 2015. And I played a really good set. I mean, like if I do say so myself, I thought it went really well, but then I just kind of lost all that steam and motivation. And then the next year he was like, hey, I was doing this fest again, but I don't want to do any repeat shows or repeat projects. So like, you doing anything different? And I was like, actually, I've been doing harsh noise, like just recording like tapes and making, you know, just as like, I'm not recording this to be like, here's a tape, or record to put something out. I was just making harsh noise because it's what I wanted to hear. Yeah. And then I was like, I don't really have a name though. And I mean, Grant helped me pick out the first name. I mean, like I kind of was like, had an idea, and I was like a couple options, and I was like, Body Carve was one of them. He's like, Body Carve sounds like a sick project. And I was like, yeah, that's like my top. So then that was it. I played the fucking show, which my first few shows probably weren't great, but it was definitely like the core concepts that I had. I always have rules and constraints with like music where I'm like, this is what this is about.
Yeah.
This is how I do it. These are the things I won't do, or I'm going to stay away from.
Yeah.
And, or the electronics or whatever that I'm going to stay away from and not utilize.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I'm not doing vocals. I'm not using synths. I'm not, like this is different from ligature impression because there's it's different. And so it's like, was like, no vocals, no mouth sounds, no synthesizers on deck. This is just like gritty, nasty shit. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say I never would, because I think I needed that to just start something different and to leave the other shit in the past, or at least separate them. Mm-hmm. I think I've got like some pink noise for like that I use from like a synth that I like recorded just to have like gritty, rather than making it in Audacity, which is just as easy, but I just plugged it in and got some noise. And I'm not interested in making some like emotionally evocative harsh noise or whatever, I think that's cool, but I think I wasn't looking for like textures of like, I really just wanted to have something that's like abrasive and just knuckle dragging harsh noise, like 90s style Mother Savage, style shit. And whether some people look at that as being like rehash or whatever, it's like, that's what I felt like. And I also, it's like coming into Body Carve, it's like I was doing this stuff and I felt like there was definitely a vibe of like what harsh noise, what people like thought was good. And it was after Custodian, Custodian kind of stopped. And I was like, to me, I was like, a bunch of people, like, it seems like everybody loves short songs. They love these, like this really crisp, they love cut ups. They love this really crisp sound. They love this like oversaturated kind of like, I don't want to like rag on digital clipping, cause like there's some sick shit, like, but it's like this like really computer recorded sound where it's like a lot of cuts. It sounds heavily edited. And like, I was like, I just want something that sounds like a fucking monster, like something that just sounds like, obviously like Macronympha, style stuff where it's just gutter, nasty, but still like tight and like just a fucking avalanche of sound. And I was like, that's what I feel like should be done. And that's what I think that I like that there's variety, but like, you're not going to see me shouting out cut up noise or like loop based stuff. As much as I love Custodian, like when I was like, that shit rules, but like, I don't want to make that. And so I was like, I'm not using loops and I'm not going to,
Okay. So you have a certain sound that you were going for, but there are also pretty like clear thematics associated with the project. Can you tell me a bit about those and what's behind the project thematically?
I'm a science teacher and like science, freak and fanatic or whatever. And, one of my things that I like to do are just like read about science and new things and like collect fossils or whatever. But it's like, I'm also super interested in like medical things. And it's never been like, ooh, this is the fucking brutal shit, man. It's like, I'm like watching it just like, whoa, like, like find a video of an autopsy online and I'm just like watching it, like taking it all in, like as like an observational standpoint. And like, that's usually what it's more about. It's not like, it's not like I'm just like thinking that this is shocking. I know the people buy this shit have seen plenty of corpses and asses and shit, but it's like the mixture of, this kind of like sex death thing that like, with Atrex Morgan, it's like a mixture of like bodies that were living or not. And it's like, sometimes, especially with like some tapes, it's like medical stuff, but not in like a, hey, guess what? Be shocked. It's like, sometimes it's like almost educational, but like not like I'm going to teach people, but it's like really like, I'm like reading papers about, so what was it? Hair tourniquet? No, the auto amputation, the tape I did for New Forces. Yeah. It was like, there was a whole bunch of stuff behind it when I was like reading about hair tourniquet syndrome and auto amputation of like babies' limbs and other appendages and stuff. And it wasn't like, I was like, guess what? Some babies have the genitals cut off. Be shocked. It was like this like deep interest of like, not like I'm like, ooh, so interesting, but it was like, my mind just got fixated on this. And obviously I had a kid. And so it's like, I'm thinking about that stuff. And then I'm like, then I just couldn't stop thinking about different ways. And then it became this release where it's like I'm using steel wire because it's like, it reminds me of like threads and stuff. And it's, I think I played a show with you when you came into Minneapolis and did that kind of music with the steel wire. But so it's like that kind of stuff. It's, body carve obviously relates to like cutting open bodies, whether it be like murder or like, but more often more like a medical kind of a thing. Because it's like, true crime's cool, but it's not like something I focus on.
Right.
But yeah, just this like penetrative act, a lot of times I play with like a knives or screwdrivers and I'm like, like stabbing into stuff. I mean, you can't hear it. That's not like, I'm like, I'm stabbing stuff and you can like,
Yeah.
It's not like I'm trying to paint that picture always, but like it's there because it's for me to like express that. And then it just comes into something. So if somebody's like, oh, it sounds like that, that's cool. But it's not like I need that to be seen.
Sure.
Because for me, it's just like, I'm doing these things because that's like what I'm putting out into this. But then it's like, I'm not really concerned if people get it always because it's more of just like, I think that, with music that I release, my thing is always, I want the art to be as reflective and like deeply tied into what was originally intended. But I also would like to think that fucking Tommy, what a savage, releases one of the best fucking tapes in, I don't know what, 20 years, black cover.
Yeah.
Just the name.
Yeah.
He could have put any cool artwork on there, but it's just black with Turix set on there. Like fucking, I mean, that's my, before I got that tape, I was like, that's my mentality of like, this shit should be good enough for me to want to pick up and listen to and be like, I want to buy that.
Right.
I want to have that. It should be good enough that on a black cover, blank cover, it should stand on its own.
Yeah.
And then anything else just like helps to illustrate that more. And so,
This episode of White Centipede Noise Podcast is brought to you by Scream and Ride Distro and Absurd Exposition Label. Canadian-based source for experimental electronics, harsh noise, etc. Over 1,500 items in stock on all formats. Media mail shipping to the USA and affordable international shipping. Coming early 2022. Hermit Chick White Split Tape. 2 distinct vocal noises approaches from opposite coasts of Canada. Neural Objective Constraint Tape. Unreleased material from 1996. Mott and Violent Shogun. Mangle Tape. Split and collaborative tapeworks. Andrew Nolan and Misery Engine. Split Tape. Cosmic Industrial Dusty Noise Malaise. The Rita. Herschel The Shoot Tape. Sputtering Crunch of Obsessive Minimalism. Alex York Double Tape. Tape and synthworks for melancholy mood. Visit screamandride.com and absurdexposition.bandcamp.com. You've referenced it before, and I think I have it right here in front of me. Your most probably like, I don't know. I would say it's your crowning achievement at this point is Guts in Red Plastic. This is a tape, and I'm going to read the insert here. On March 28th, 2018, I performed a necropsy in my lab. A microphone was attached to the scalpel and body at different points as I cut through the skin, muscle, and bone. The glistening organs were excised and placed in a red viscera bag with the bare microphone. For over 20 minutes, I mangled and mutilated the organs while listening to the amplified wet mush of the bloody innards and the crackle of the plastic as the sounds recorded to the tape. So, tell me about what actually happened for this recording.
Yeah, so I teach science. So I have like a science classroom in a lab. I'd been thinking a lot about this idea of like, what would happen if I, because it's not like I'm like, I don't work in like I don't work in a funeral home, or like I don't work with like medical staff to like have access to human corpses or whatever. And so I'm thinking like, what would happen? Like, what would it sound like if I was able to like contact mic a bunch of guts and like like organs, like from a body or whatever, from like a dead human or dead animal, like, and the idea of like there's like rules and like all this stuff around, it's not like you can just be like, hey, could I go in and like after you've done the autopsy, could I just like mic this up and mush my hands around? But in my mind, I was like, what would this sound like and how would this be? And obviously like, huge shout out to the Rita being like massively, for me at least, influential as far as like using sound sources to like build something out, and he's like very strict about like, it just can be the sound source and that's it. But for me, I was like, I want to make something out of it, but it's like underlying. But anyway, it was like this thing that's like, I'd written it down before and I was like, that'd be, something I want to do. And I had the name in my head of like this, the name comes from an Atrax Morgue song, Sperm on Red Plastic. And or it's a reference to that, and only in name, but I was just like, okay, and I had these bags that I was like, these like, what are they called? These like red viscera bags, these like biohazard bags, that I'd found or ordered or something for no other reason than just having them, and because it's like something I would do, and it just like, without being too cryptic, but like, there was a dead animal at my job. And I was like, okay, well, like I can take this. And it was like after hours. And I think I just, at that point, after I'd been thinking about it, it was like this idea was swirling in my head. And I just took a contact mic and had it in my bag, but it's not like I had a recorder, but I was at my room and we had this like old, like recorder for, what is it called? Playing tapes, like books on tape, shitty brown one, like not one of those like Library of Congress, but like a shittier version of those. And so I just like plugged the contact mic into there and started recording. It's like, as I like had a scalpel and like cutting this thing open, and I'm not really listening. It's like, I'm listening to the sound from the tape machine and it's all like shitty, but it's like, I'm doing this and I'm like holding it to the scissors and I'm like going through and then I'm like, carving through. And it's like, I mean, I don't want to sound like super weird. It's like this weird, like, it was like, I'm in this place where like, maybe this is like the most fucked up thing anybody could walk in on me doing in this school. And I'm like uncomfortable. The smell is disgusting to me. I just think it's not the smell of blood, like this, like, and it gets more and more. And it's like getting stronger in the room. I'm in like a very small room in like a closet. And it's like, it stinks. It's like smearing all over. It's like, I get this stuff out and I'm taking pictures like in the, in the tape. It's like where I have the titles on the inside, like that's a picture that I took from it. And Whoa. It's like, yeah. And it's like the collage on the outside is like a combination of some medical pictures, some, nasty stuff. Yeah, that's it. But yeah, so that's like a picture I took and like of that. And then it's like, then I like take the stuff out and I'm like, putting it in this bag. And with the mic, and it's like, I'm just kind of, like I say, it's like the way I'd phrase it in that, it's like funny hearing you read it, because I haven't read that in a long time, or obviously never heard somebody else read it, but like, I haven't even read it in a while. But it's like, I'm stating that, it sounds so like cryptic, but when I was writing that, I was thinking like, I'm just trying to be as matter of fact and like, obviously, like, it's like partly the way I talk is like, being like elaborative or whatever, but I was trying to be as matter of fact and also descriptive as possible, of like being very just like, this is what I did. This is how it went. This is what it was like. And obviously it sounds kind of like, fucked up or whatever, but it really was just like, almost like a document. It's not like I'm like, bashing some brains in while I, harvest a fucking skull or something. It's like,
it's subtle, but it's still quite, I mean,
it's heavy, but it's not quite, like
it paints a picture, and it paints there's definitely feeling to it. You finish the writing with saying, 8 months later, I can still see the blood on my gloves and smell the meaty iron filling the room. I mean, that's
yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It was fucking gross. It was gross. And, I think, yeah, it's like when I was writing that, I wanted it to like paint the picture of what it was, being there. Like, can you see it when you're listening, when you're reading that? Can you see it? Can you
very much so?
And in the second track, it's like, I start with just the plain, I don't think it's any affected, maybe like a bass overdrive or something that it was through, but it's like, it's like, I don't want to like, nobody wants to picture me punching pedals or whatever, but it's like, it's like I play the intro, it starts and ends the second track with just the raw sound, and it's like, just, yeah, I don't know. I mean, that was, but anyway, so it's like, I recorded that I did that sound source, right? It's like I did that thing, and it's like, it's fucking gross, you know, and I'm all like sketched out, you know, being at, you know, my job, being where I'm at, you know, I'm like, is somebody going to come in here? And I'm like sitting here like a absolute fucking freak show. And then it's like, you know, I'm all done. I've got this cassette tape now with the sound source. It's maybe like 30 to 40 minutes of sound. It might've been on a C60. So maybe it was like a full 30. And then in my mind, I'd done the Vomit Arsonist tape. So I had some of these extra C42s, and I had for some random thing I did, I had like these, what are they called? VHS boxes, right? And so it's like all these like things swirling in my head of like what I should do, or it's like kind of generally how this like currently right now I have like all these ideas swirling in my head about like a future like release kind of like that, where it's like art package kind of like, but it's like, I'm just like, I've been thinking about it for 2 years now, and it's like, maybe I'll do it this year or next year, but it's like this stuff just sits there and like festers in my brain of like, what should I do? Or like how this could be. And it's like, it should be this, you know, if somebody listens to it and it's like, oh, this is just a tape, but it's like, to me, it's like something where it's like, this is like, it's something that became bigger than, it's like something that grew, like almost evolved.
Right.
But, I recorded the sound source, and then like the second track I recorded within a day or a couple of days, maybe it's that weekend of like that happening. And then, or, you know, me recording it, I recorded the second track, or at least recorded probably 5 versions of it, because I was like, and that was like, you know, back to like, because, you know, I hate to like sound like I'm dishing on Custodian, because dude is you know, hung out with John in his basement where he's just like his minimal shit. You know, he's a homie, and like, I'm not saying anything is up with that, but in my mind, it was like, I think he had a huge impact and effect on what noise was at the time. Even like Breaking the Will, it's like at the time it was like super fast, you know, cut up stuff, and I was like, I want something that's just like longer, bigger tracks. I had these C42s, so I was like, I want to record a tape that's like brick fucking 20-minute tracks. I had also at Amplified Humans gotten your fucking tape, or the tape that you put out of Action Discipline, and massive ignorant C60 with just like brutal harsh noise, different textures, all these transitions. And I was like, that's what the fucking shit should sound like.
Yeah.
That's like king harsh noise shit.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I like mushed that, you know, I was like, had the fucking contact mic, and I'm like doing this shit.
Yeah.
And I watched a timer that said it was like 20 or 22 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to make sure I have this. And it got nastier and stinkier as I went. Oh. And I was like, this is so fucking gross to me. And it's because I don't eat meat, dude.
Yeah, you're a vegetarian, right?
Yeah. And so it's like, this isn't like, you know, anybody who hunts or has a dad or a family member who hunts could go with them and fuck around with the gut pile in the woods, you know, but it's like, this is like my version of that. So it's like, it was never supposed to be something where I was like trying to convince people that this is like a human corpse. I said necropsy, I think, because I thought that differentiated a little bit more, like animal necropsy versus human autopsy. But you know, whatever. I mean, the sound is what it is. But I recorded that shit and then went to play some shows with Grant in like Chicago and Grand Rapids, and like in Minneapolis. And the first night in Minneapolis, like my set, I had some technical issues anyway. But when I played in Chicago, I started and I was like, this is Guts and Red Plastic, and I just started.
Were you playing live with that Gut source tape?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So I played with that, and then like, yeah. So it's like, I mean, that I guess, you know, built it up a little bit, and it's like, you know, I had that tape, and it's like, I kind of played the set like I have the second track, where it's like started with the sound source and ended with it, and there's junk metals, you know, smashing around, and you know, but I did it live. So I played that set live, like, or that track set, whatever. And then the A side, it was like, I played, a compactor came back, and I played a pretty good set, I think. It's some place, but so I was like, okay, like this is fleshed out enough where this could be that. And I used the sound. So I used the cutting open sound source for that. And then the mush, you know, in the bag was for the B side. So it's like I don't even remember the track titles, but the first track is supposed to be like, it is literally like cutting open and extracting.
Yeah. Side A is necropsy, entry excision.
Nice.
B is called mangled, in parentheses, Guts in Red Plastic. So yeah, that follows. Yeah. That follows. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's literally like, that's what happened. It's like, I recorded them in opposite directions, but like that's like the first 10 minutes of the A side is with the sound source. And then it's like maybe 10 minutes in, it's like I lost it, but it's like that fuzz from the blank tape or whatever.
Yeah.
Or it's like I think I cut it off and then it just goes off and into all like, you know, junk metal squealing and feedback. But with the artwork, I was like, you know, it was like, oh, I've got this, I've got these. And I was like, this is what it's going to be. And so I made 12 of them. Because in my mind, I was like, even though I was like being all kind of snotty and like, this is what shit should sound like. It should be longer tracks, brutal, blown out, harsh noise, just, you know, simple elements, just absolutely wrecking, you know, brutal stuff. And, you know, like I said before, like just like not just wall noise, but like a wall of noise. Like just constant, you know, with transitions and with other elements kind of peeking in and out, which is like the shit I like. I mean, we all like it, but that was like what I thought it should sound like. And yeah, so then I was like, okay, well, this is, I don't want to like, I'm going to sound like a douche or whatever, but I was like, this is kind of like extreme. I don't know if anybody even cares about this. It's not like I have like bunch of people begging me for masters. I mean, you put out the Scrap Gash, which was, you know, awesome. I was like, me on White Centipede. Whoa, that's so fucking sick. But I'm like, I'm just going to do 12. This is like an artistic vision of like, it's going to come in a VHS box. It's going to have this big collage artwork in there and half of it's going to be covered. And you'd have to take the artwork, the inserts apart to actually see the full collage. And like, you know, it's going to be, I'm going to, you know, have a bag that's glued in there, which also, you know, I hate to sound like, you know, it's like my influences, whatever. Another fucking shout out to Marco Cobelli or whatever, Marco Cobelli, Atrex Morgue. The idea of putting shit in a bag, you know, it's like I should probably try to stay focused, but it really was like this huge conceptual, like, you know, music, but then the packaging was like almost as, you know, conceptual because the pieces of raw tape that are in there are sound source. Like Mike Finkley Striations literally took one of those strips and made a tape loop out of it and then like put it on one of the trauma codes. It's like anybody could do that who has that. It's like and even for the larger edition, when I reissued or did a full edition of like the VHS box, I dubbed tapes and cut them up. So I had shit to throw in because those were the guts of, you know, the guts and the tape guts. And I probably like, you know, it's like in my mind, I was like, I should just rip the fucking tape out of the actual magnetic tape out of the tape. And I think it was like a friend of mine told me about, so you know, the Minneapolis black metal dude, Votana?
Yes.
Yeah, right. So like that dude, I'd heard that he had like taken a tape, smashed it, so it was like broken and the tape was all out and like wrapped it around. And I was like, that's such a shitty, snotty thing to do, especially if you have like, he's like all cult style or whatever. But it was like, I was like, you know, that'd be cool because it's like rip it out. I'm like, well, I don't want to fuck the tape up. But I was like, I want to put it in there in like this mush of, you know, crushed mush of magnetic tape. And I wrapped it shut. And so it's like, in my mind, I was like, you open this up and it's like, there's a bag and then you can pull it out and there's like tape just falling everywhere. And then it's just, you know, it is what it is. And
it's I mean, it is what it is. It is what you say it is. It's just that. It's great packaging. It's a great experience. And, thanks, you know, and it's not just packaging, it's the concept and the sounds, but the whole thing, you know, just it's very powerful release. So that was a really, I mean, you've done other great recordings since then. But I think just in terms of full presentation, everything that's I think really the standout.
I mean, I'm still making, you know, noise and have like a, you know, full length CD coming out or whatever. But if that ends up being like, you know, a lot of people are like, no, I always want my next one to be my best one. Honestly, like if I recorded 10 more tapes or whatever, kept doing noise for 5 more years, 10 more years, ever, and that still was the best thing I ever did, I would be totally fine with it because I put so much into it and so much time and thought and like, it really, you know, I don't know if I'd say, I mean, it seems trite to like be like my masterpiece, but like that was everything I wanted this project to be. And it still is. It's like, besides maybe some tweaking, there's, you know, I'm talking with somebody about reissuing it as a CD or whatever, but you know, I'm like, okay, well, I'd want to maybe not remix it fully, but like make sure the sound is good for that format. And, but it's like, I still am very happy with it. Like some things I've put out and I'm like, it's kind of whatever. Wish I'd done this differently, but that's like that one. I was very happy with it. And I was so, you know, I'm a humble person. I was very very excited and flattered that so many people bought it from me. I kind of, like I said, I sent it off to basically, I think I traded some, and a handful I sent to friends. You know, I'll just kind of lump them together. The biggest influence of me like doing more was Matt Purse and Luke Tandy. And they're like basically both along the lines of like, this is so fucking good. You need to do more of these.
Yeah.
It's not right that you would do 12 of these and be like, done. You know, he's like, you need to do more. Like, there's no reason to not do it. You really should. And I was like, damn, like, I totally respect you guys a ton. You know, maybe I should look at this. And I was like, maybe I'll do this. I'll kind of toy with the idea and do like a pre-order just to see. Cause I'll do a Norelco version, but to me, the Norelco it's not like the VHS version is the version. It's the actual release. And like, whereas some people are like, this is the version and this is the special edition. Yeah. The Norelco is like the economy edition. Yeah. You know, it's like to pull out the shitty tape pieces. Yeah. That was like, you know, my idea, but those guys like gassed me up about it. And I was like, all right, let's go. I'm going to do them. I'll do a pre-order. Like a lot of people, you know, wanted them, the special version. And I didn't charge a lot for it. It was like probably $10, which is what some people charge for like a shitty Norelco now sometimes. But I was just like, I just was like, wanted it to be out in that form. And I was okay taking a hit a little bit, but yeah, a lot of people ordered for me. I see, you know, people I really respected that I didn't even know were like, it popped up in my email and I was like, damn, you know, Gray, I'd see his name. And I'm like, Gray from Chondritic? I'd never talked to him before. And I was like, oh my God, fucking Gray's ordering from me. Yeah. Full circle. Cause I came up with the Tronics board, you know, Gray's like shit. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is like, you know, Sam McKinley shouting me out for Ligature Impression, Gray buying a tape for me. Is there, you know, this like awesome. I was so stoked. And obviously then we like, you know, became friends in chat and stuff, but it's like, anyway, I know I'm like talking probably too much about this, but I'm definitely very happy with it. I was happy. The reception was good. I was happy to see it pop up on people's like year-end lists. I mean, I don't need to, you know, act like I didn't see that stuff, you know, it wasn't just friends of mine. It was like people I didn't know. And I was just like, damn, like, I felt very, cause I mean, it was not something I did with anybody in mind except myself. Right.
So with the story of Guts Nerd Plastic, you know, you described how that scene went down. You were at your work as a teacher. How do you deal with that? Do you worry about your staff or your students finding out about what you do as an artist and that being problematic? What do you like? What do you know about that? Do you know about the legal protections you might have or not have, or, you know, any of that stuff? Are you aware of that?
Yeah, I mean, a bit. It's not like I'm like, you know, like, you know, talk to a lawyer. I don't like talk to a lawyer or anything like that. But I mean, as far as I know, the things I've done, or at least could be like directly tied with some level of evidence. It's not like I've done anything like super criminal. And I think that obviously with the nature of like what we do, you know, I do get concerned about that. And, you know, I'm pretty vague about things and hidden about certain things just because I think about ramifications of not just, I mean, as you know, legal stuff aside, the social aspect of it, you know, like it doesn't necessarily have to be something that's like a crime to be something that's damaging when it has to do with your career or your job, or, you know, I mean, I'm sure there's like people that know me. It's not like I put on a front in person. Yeah. If I'm cryptic or vague about things, it's just because I think that's all people need to know. Right. And, you know, so it's like, you know, gutter bloat is like, you know, when I post stuff on Instagram, it's like, I'm not sitting there brooding and like, you know, speaking in like, you know, cryptic black metal tongue or whatever, you know, to be like extra mysterious or tough. It's like, I'm just like being me, like, and everybody who knows me knows, you know, who I am, but that sometimes isn't enough. If I were like, you know, copy of Guts Nerd Plastic gets in the hand of like a family member of my students or something, or, you know, it could be bad, but I know that I haven't, you know, I'm in a union and like, you fuck them, you know, it's not like I'm doing anything that hurts my job. It's not like I'm doing anything that affects any families or students.
Right.
I think that as far as what I'm doing, it's fine. Even if it would be received in a very like alarming way from the people, because that's not like, I'm not like ignorant to that, or like, I'm not stupid being like, no, it's just art. No big deal. Like, it's fucked up. You know, it's like, it's a lot of weird stuff and uncomfortable things for a lot of people. Even if you could find some parent of one of my students that's like obsessed with true crime. And then they're like, oh, my kid's teacher does this. Like, you know, so I do think about that a lot. And I do try to be a little bit more hidden and a little bit more careful about things. I don't just, I have, you know, friends that I work with on, you know, on social media, and some of them, you know, I keep different social medias for, you know, different things. And not because it's, you know, just because I want to connect with people, but also like, I want to be able to speak freely about certain things, you know. I'm not going to post on gutter bloat. It's noise. It's noise and nasty stuff. And I'm fine with that. Some people might think that that's like, oh, that's not your authentic self. And it's like, well, guess what? My fucking authentic self has been splintered forever. I've constantly had to reconcile things that I like doing and the one way that I am versus like how I'm in another context. And, you know, I'm not going to talk about, you know, pornographic power electronics at Christmas dinner with my family, you know. I'm not going to bring that stuff up. And I think that it's like, I just, you know, I'm not going to post a bunch of holiday pictures of me with my daughter on gutter bloat, because that's not what that's about. You know, it really is like, this isn't like, that's not just like, here's a window to my life. Like, this is about gutter bloat, body carve, noise related stuff, going and, you know, going seeing industrial stuff, hanging out with Grant, doing fucked up shit in an industrial waste spot. Or like, you know, so that's fine with me. And it's like, I'm very like, my life is very compartmentalized because of that. You know, my, you know, in the beginnings up until, you know, a couple of years ago, it's like, I was with a partner who was like completely not interested in anything related to industrial or noise. And so I still, even at home, would have to very much compartmentalize and segment my activities because, you know, it's like you know, that person didn't give a shit. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna have to do this in my own little pocket of time. And obviously it's different now, but yeah, with my job, it's definitely like, and obviously like there's all that, but that's just like the one aspect of it. Like, whether it's chicken or the egg type thing, like, me being a science educator is like, obviously stems from me being obsessed and interested in like learning as much as I can about everything I can that I'm interested in. That leads me into like how, you know, especially with body carve, being connected to like, you know, digging into these topics and kind of like in a very like, I don't know what the word is. I'm losing mine too. In a very like, I don't know, examination type way, you know? And so it's like, that's part of who I am. And this isn't like a persona of like, oh, I'm a harsh noise guy who gets obsessed with things. It's like, that's just kind of how I am. And especially when it comes to the things I, you know, get fixated on, where it's like, there's a whole reason why I did auto amputation. And it wasn't because I thought it'd be edgy or brutal. You know, it's like, oh, like, you know, I find hair wrapped around my kid's toe and it's starting to change color a little bit. And I get really fucking alarmed. And then I start poring over all this, you know, medical literature about that stuff and about that. And it's like, then obviously it's not like I'm like, hey, here's this event that happened to me, and now here's the release about it. It's just like, that just kind of became that. And, you know, it's like,
so
in many ways, actually, get my mind off of it.
In many ways, your profession is actually quite closely related to your work as an artist. I mean, they definitely come from the same root, but at the same time, you have to compartmentalize them. And I mean, totally. I really do think we should consider for this interview protecting your identity as much as possible, not because of anything that you do that is, I think, illegal or bad, but I still think it's, I don't want to, you know, cry about the PC monster or something like that these days, but it's very much a thing that with the internet, people get exposed to things and people say things and they're taken the wrong way. And especially when you're dealing with young people, I mean, I think it's valid also that, I mean, I don't know. What do you think about it? Do you think it would be valid if parents of your students like found on your tapes or collage you did and were like, what the hell? Like how, like, I mean, what would you think about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like one of those things that I think once in a while I get paranoid about, or the idea of like my boss emails me and is like, we need to talk. And then like shows me a computer screen of like some shit. And it's like, is this you?
Yeah.
Like me, like ripping a fucking set, and then like Google's my name and the next tab is like a fucking screenshot of the Guts and Red Plastic intro or something.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? Or, like a parent just emailed me this. Is this you? Like,
Yeah.
It's like R. Kelly with a piss tape or something. Like, it's like literally me like fucking ripping in a fucking piece of junk metal. I'm like, show me the ID. That ain't me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think about that stuff and what I think it's justified for a parent to be alarmed. I think in their context of their lives and what they're interested in, what music is and what teachers are, I don't think that's shock. I mean, I'd be a real dumb piece of shit to be like, well, I don't see what's the problem here. I mean, I'm just literally playing with some metal. Don't you see? It's obviously there's more to it than that. And there's like dark elements that as a person who's like a person of influence, with my kids, with my community or whatever in that way, like it makes sense that some people be alarmed. But I think I'd like to think that the person I am has been established, and those things might seem like alarming to some people, but the majority of people would be like, have to reconcile that that this person is just compartmentalized, that it's not like, oh, that's who they've been all along and now they're there. It's like, no, this is the same person. Yeah. So it's like a mentality. And maybe I'm naive about that because this is shit that most people would never come in contact with or understand. But, if I was a director of a horror film, people wouldn't be like so alarmed that like, oh, I did this. Maybe it's like, but it's because it's so obscure and because people have no frame of reference for it. They're like, nobody knows about noise. I mean, I work with people. It's not like I work at an art studio. Right. I work with a bunch of jocks, people who are like book people. And it's like, that's cool, but they have no frame of reference for it. And so it would make sense. I'd like to think that because of my general protections and my, obviously the work I do and my actions so far in my career have spoken for themselves. I mean, I'm like a well-liked teacher by my students and the people I work with, that it's not like I'm like some piece of shit that people are looking to get rid of. Like, I'd be surprised if there'd be some horrible reckoning. Right. But obviously I play live, I'm talking to you. I'm not, I know that there's some level where I think it's like one of those things where it's like in my mind, I'm like, the day will come and I just hope that it's, smooth enough.
Tell me a bit about your label Gutter Bloat.
Yeah. So Gutter Bloat's my label. I've done, I don't know, 8 or 9 releases, maybe 10. I'm getting confused because I'm working on 2 right now. And I can't remember, maybe those are 10 and 11 or 9 or 10. I can't remember, but I done a label when I first started doing noise, because I was like, that's what you do, start a label. And that label was very focused on like a kind of a cult, a cult type stuff. I was also doing visual art, like woodcuts. I did a couple releases, not many. And then I just stopped. And then when I was doing body carve, and, obviously during that transitional time, I wanted to do a different label. I was like, I want to start doing a label again, but I don't want to do that old one. That one's done. That's like, I don't want to rehash that. I want to do something different, something kind of nastier. And really just like in my mind, I was like, I want this to be an extension of my art. Like, it's not like, I wanted to have a hand in this stuff. So it's like, I'm not just doing this as like a business thing or like hey, I really like your stuff, give me whatever. Like, I was like, I want to do the art. And that's, gone here and there. There's definitely been releases where some of the art or all of the art or whatever has been done by the artists or whatever. But it was just definitely something where I wanted to do more visual stuff. I wanted to have more of a reason, and I wanted to have a deep connection. I guess with the old label, I did the exact same thing because I did woodcuts. I did a Crown of Cerberus, Mac's old ambient tape collage thing. I did a release for him, and I did a woodcut. It was like wrapped in a ribbon, and it was all like, it was like he was stoked, I was stoked. But it's like I always wanted this like handmade art or handmade packaging or kind of this like very connected approach where I'm not just, and not that there's anything wrong with pumping stuff out, like just like, yep, we're going to do an Norelco, send it to the plant. I was like, I wanted to like have this connection to the art, to the music, and it'd be almost a collaborative thing. Not that I'm latching onto their stuff. I don't need to label myself as like the artist of the package on the release, but just having that connection deepens it for me.
Yeah.
I'm not, and it's like, I just, I get carried away with stuff. I get really hyper focused and fixated on things. And so it's like, just me pushing the visuals and in a way that I thought would be complementary to the artists. I think special packaging is important in noise. It doesn't have to be everyone. And I think it's better when it's focused on what the artist is doing in, an intentional way. And so, I'm pretty proud of it. Every release, I'm pretty proud of how they turned out visually. And obviously I think I stand by my home dubs.
Yeah.
And I think that, get a nice quality product. And there's a lot of, some labels put out absolute, errors are errors, but like, some people just have dog shit dubs and artworks on, shitty paper, and they're just like kind of just thrown together as something that seems kind of generic or formulaic. And not to say that I don't. I mean, people could point to me and call me the dead body collager on the Shame Cup from Harsh Truths or whatever, but it's like, I mean, I like that stuff. I think it's really interesting. I think looking at the different colors of, Gutter Blow to me was like this bloated, there's a thing called marbling that happens to bodies after they start to, decompose, where it's like they start turning, tissue starts turning kind of purple. It's like veinous and disgusting. And that was like the first Body Carve tape has like a picture of like, maybe it was like the website, whatever, had like the original tag had like a big picture of that. But just like the idea of like different textures of like viscera and like, it wasn't black and white, a lot of it was in color.
Yeah, it's a very colorful. It's a very colorful label. I think the first Body Carve tape also has a collage like that, which is like, I mean, I'm thinking off the top of my head, it's like blues and purples and yellows. Yeah, but it's all like obviously decomposition and flesh. Yeah, and some nudes. It was like, to me, it was like different forms of bodies and like cutting a piece of like a pornography or whatever, like cutting that apart. Like it's a very, I don't know. It's like, I don't know how everybody else is. I don't sit and like chat with people about the action of like tearing, but it's like, I'm like sitting there with a razor blade and I'm cutting around like, pussy or something. And it's like, okay, well, this is, like, I'm like very intentionally or like structuring this where it's like a leg wound gaping open, but it's like, then I kind of like layer it over, a picture of a woman with like her crotch, there, but it's like all you don't see, you see you see the medical gash, you don't see her gash or whatever. Coming soon on White Centipede Noise, Altar of Flies, Otterblick, Triple LP. Tell me about the Trauma Code 1 and 2 collab. I mean, you did both Trauma Code 1 and 2 from Striations, and tell me about this project, because it seems to have a pretty clear theme, and not Striations, but this Trauma Code series. It has a very clear theme, and also it says you're listed as collaborator in some sound sense. I don't know if you mentioned earlier that you'd used some tape loops from the Guts and Red Plastic tape. Maybe that's the extent of it, but you're credited on both tapes. So tell me a bit about those tapes. Mike's a fucking freak. So I mean, obviously, and I'll be a little cryptic. I mean, some people know, but I don't want to like spill anybody else's situations or whatever. But there was a time, at least, when he was working with a company that cleaned up messes, cleaned up crimes or, things like that. And so, but I think this is even before then. And so it's like,
I think it's like a pretty cool, like, I think it's like a fun story or connection. I've been in contact with Mike for years, but when that first started happening, it's like I was sitting at home, might've been the summertime. I was doing the collage for the the penetrating neck traumas, slit throats, body carve split, which was all that shit. And I'm messaging, talking with Mike online, and we both were watching Inhumanities, the shockumentary, Mondo film or whatever. And we were just talking about it, and we were like watching it on our, computers or whatever, our TVs together. Like, it's like some dorky, like you want to, or not like going scene by scene, but like I'm doing this collage, he's doing whatever. We're like watching this and talking about it. And then eventually he like gets this like thing to do trauma code, and like where it's like, these like accidents, car accident focused, and like tragedies, and like flaming apartment buildings and stuff. And it was very like, I think very characteristic of me and Mike. It's very like, God, the word's not sterile. I'm trying to think of the word. It's very like matter of fact. And this wasn't meant to be like an educational text, but it was very much we used a lot of like, my mom's a fucking weirdo. She has like all these books of like, dead bodies and like, the death scenes books. She had a book from the 1950s, or a book that had a bunch of photos from Minneapolis and St. Paul from the 1950s. And the really fucked up thing about that era was probably because it just came after World War II and the Korean War and stuff. It's like in that era, people were like desensitized to war and like violence. And this book has a bunch of stuff about the Winter Carnival and like parades and shit, but it also has a bunch of pictures of like corpses hanging from the rafters, people dead in the snow, bodies covered in sheets in front of flaming cars and buildings and stuff. Wow. And it was like, photographers would just go and snap photos for like the news report. And so it's like this whole mentality of like this, like these like egregious, like natural events or like, accidents that happened. And it's like, I don't remember when I think at the time Mike kind of got working with that group or whatever, and ended up having some connection with like, with his, I guess, I don't want to say too much, but there's definitely some photos in there that are just collected from sources and books, and maybe some from online. There's definitely some photos in there that were taken by one of us, by us and included. And, it's like there's a book called Trauma Code that we both own that kind of goes into a lot of that stuff. And the pictures are kind of shitty, but it's, so it's like that happened. And so Mike and I are like, in that situation, in that, in that context, Mike and I are very like, aligned with our thinking and at time, especially aesthetically. So he was like, hey, and so I'd done all the artwork for Gutterbloat. And then he's like, hey, I got this dude. I got a collage from him. I want to use that. And in my head, I was kind of like, damn, I do the art for this shit. Yeah. I'm like, all right, that's fine. I don't want to be a dick. Like he basically told me rather than asked. And I was like, you know what? It's all good. Like you obviously have a serious vision about this. And I want to respect that. Yeah. But I want to have a piece of this too, because like I deeply care, and I don't need my name on it, but like I want to be connected to this rather than just dubbing the tapes. Right. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm doing a fucking huge ass fold out thing. So I did both sides of that insert, and handmade collage and whatever with like transparencies and newspaper clippings and stuff. And it's like, there's like an obituary for some local kid around here that like got in a car wreck, and it's like this sad thing that his mom, like not an obituary, it's like a memoriam from like a mom. And it wasn't like, I didn't put that in there thinking like, this is fucking brutal. People would be upset about this. I was just like, this is so fucked up. Yeah. This is so depressing. And so a lot of the stuff in there was like talking about injuries and like a lot of like medical type stuff and like graphics. And it was really just like talking about inertia and like, car impact and stuff like that. And both of us were like getting way obsessed with like how this stuff reacts, and from a scientific and from a historical and, news report standpoint. So, and then the second one was kind of just like, he just kind of went deeper and deeper. And I think I sent him samples of junk metal for both. I can't remember, but, I think my contributions were, besides visual art and like, the collages, maybe some junk metal. And it's hard to remember. I mean, it was like a while ago, I guess, but but yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, I like that. I mean, there's a third one that's, you know, supposed to come. Mike's kind of been sending me a bunch of messages and doing stuff. So it's supposed to be a trilogy.
Wow.
I tried to keep it uniform. Like my idea is if they're next to each other on, you know, like, you know, all three next to each other, there's like some uniformity, but they each look different.
Cool.
The colors, you know, red and yellow correspond to the colors of the trauma code. So there's a third one that'll be blue.
Cool.
And, yeah, anyway, it's like cool. It's like, and I get sucked into that, like this whole like all encompassing, like it's not just like bam, 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 like random shit together.
Yeah.
It's very like intentional from a point of like deep study, which obviously like connecting back to my job and just my general personality. Like that's what I like to do. I like to pour over things and get as deep as I can and just like learn as much. And, you know, a lot of us get sucked into this stuff because of that. You know, it's like Grant with his sewers, like the dude knows so much fucking shit. And like, you know, you give him a chance to talk and it's like, he's going to go off. And it's like, a lot of us have these like things where it's like, oh, like, don't open the book unless you're going to be ready to shut it, because I want to kind of, you know, I get excited about this stuff. And anyway, yeah, that's Trauma Code. And Mike sent me he did some special editions. So he's sent me the copies of those. He sent me like, I'm pretty sure I've got a picture. I've got a piece of bloody car upholstery from him.
Whoa.
And he was like, I was going to try to do, I don't know if this is for sure, but it's like, I was going to try to get these for one of each of the special editions, but I think just you and I have the pieces. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
But,
crazy.
You know, so it's, you know, like that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's like that's one of those things, like the same thing with the Guts and Red Plastic. It's like, that's something that like built and never became this like excessive, like unrelated thing. It just, as much as it built, it still was like very connected under this constant theme or umbrella. And I'm really happy with that shit too.
Cool.
So it's like Gutterbloat gives me the opportunity to do that stuff. And, you know, I worked with Spiteful Womb on the last little batch, whatever, a couple years ago. And, you know, she's like the shit. She's fucking awesome. And like had this like deep concept. So she sent me some of the paintings or collages, artworks that she did. And I kind of mixed in some source material that she sent me and broke glass and photocopied it and did all this weird stuff. And
great artwork.
Made a mirror or whatever. And
it's
just, I think I take a lot of pleasure, or get a lot of pleasure from like connecting that way and like seeing how, whether anybody else gets it, I don't need to write a whole report about it. My Gutterbloat descriptions are usually brief and not going to go into everything, but I know, and the artist knows, and it's like, that's enough for me.
Crazy.
And maybe people, when they see it or get it, they can feel it, or like
I think so. I mean, they're very, very thorough in their presentation, and you can just tell that a lot of love goes into each layout, and the level of detail is really, really impeccable.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
For sure.
That's the goal.
Yep. Now I want to know, what are your top 5 noise releases of all time?
I thought about this, you know, I'm not going to act like I was like, oh, what? You were asking me that? I mean, I thought about this because I've heard, you know, you've asked people, but it's like, even thinking about it, it's like hard to think. And I'm not a great repository for like, if you were like, now give me your 10, I'd be like, oh, you know, it's hard to think, because I think about best, or like my top is being things that are like, I like the most and being the most influential, but sometimes it's just, it might not be some deep cuts, you know?
Sure.
But anyway, fucking, Mania, Ultra Negative probably is my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Mania's the fucking best. I mean, obviously, I listen to Body Carve and it's like, yeah, I could see that. Nobody'd be shocked. Ultra Negative, I think, is the best. I listen to it all the time. Dead Body Love. Metal Induced Orgasm is my favorite, and I've only heard a rip, so I hope it gets reissued like on like CD or something, because you know, I think it's the best. I know that Lo-Fi Power Carnage is like the one that most people would say, but it's I think when I think about like harsh noise and what I like about harsh noise, it's like Metal Induced Orgasm is a lot more refined and simple. It's like that sound throughout, but the C60 of just like, and it's like, you know, had like a piece of metal or foil or something as like the artwork, and it's just like, it's what I like. It's like heavy, you know, gutter harsh noise with like transitions and stuff. I mean, he's like a master in the first place. I wish there were more reissues of his stuff, because I buy them when I can get them. But it's yeah, that's my favorite, and I hope to hear of, you know, remastered, reissued, crisp copy soon. That's not just somebody's copy that they bless them that they uploaded to the internet.
Yeah.
Atrax Morgue. I don't know. I mean, like if it's like noise, I'd probably say Sickness Report, but like I just love everything he did. I think the dude was like a crazy genius, and there's visuals.
There's no need to split hairs, in my opinion, between noise and power electronics or industrial.
Yeah.
Like that's not. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Sickness Report's like, one of the instrumental ones, but there's like all the like deep atmospheric stuff like Black Slaughter or whatever. But like Sickness Report was just like in the liner note or whatever. He's like, I just recorded this, and it's like I don't remember if it's in the liner notes or like something he wrote later, but it's just like, I recorded this shit in an hour with a synth. And I'm like, what a fucking maniac. Like this shit's so crazy. And it's like, then he chopped it into like songs or whatever, but it's so gross.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's very like, obviously up my alley with like, this like bleak kind of like gross visceral sounds, massive vulval warts and like, brain penetration and stuff like that is like very much, like captivating to me to be like, whoa, like, and then it's like, here's this sound and now you're associating with this stuff and it's very like uneasy listening.
Yes.
Macronympha. I don't know, either Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania or Superoxide. A lot of people I see like, a lot of people like Baroque or grind, but I love it's like varied sound, but still like, I don't know, it's like big and there's different layers of things. The junk metal sound is super intense, which obviously is like one of the things I love. And Superoxide has like these crazy junk metal loops.
Yeah.
And I'm not the biggest fan of loops in the first place, but like it works so well. And it's like when I got once again a rip of that, I think I need to try to find a physical if I can get a CD of that. But it's I don't know, fuzzed out noise and junk metal is like I'm a pretty easy date. I'll put out if you want to put a fucking CD with that shit and it's good. I'll spread my legs for it. But yeah, probably more Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I bought that. I've had that CD a long time, and it was. I listen to that shit all the time still. But Definitely. Superoxide, probably of like the non like big releases, like that's probably my favorite. And I don't know. True Ass Worship.
Solid.
Mania and the Rita.
That's a great one.
It's one of the first rips I downloaded, and it sounded like so cool. And I was like, this weird, like, it's like some old, like, I don't know if it's a porn or like some old, like, giallo film or whatever sample. And it's like just absolute chaos, blown out stuff, but like the tones, and it's like, it wasn't just wall stuff. And it's like, not just, even the Rita side's like varied.
Yeah.
And it's like, that stuff, I loved it. And then I have a copy now and it's just nasty.
Yeah.
Great. It's like, it's one of my favorite releases and it's a split with two of my favorites. I like try to think about like one of my favorite, like my favorite Rita, I'm like, is it, do I like Seawolf Leviathan more when it comes to that stuff, or like, Bodies Bear Traces of Violence, Carnal Violence, cause it's like those like big bricks, but like still varied and stuff.
Right.
And there's like transitions, like it's like a constant theme. Like I said, I'm an easy date.
Currently available from White Centipede Noise: Apripot, Hot Lava Shampoo CD, Jason Krumer Ruth CD, KM Tupfer, Retrace No Steps CD, The New Boyfriends, The Fourth Season CD, Aaron Dilloway and Jeff German, Casual Collision CD, co-released with New Forces. Various artists: Lacerations Double CD, co-released with Tronics. Sewer Election and Trix Rusit, Killing for Germany, Rugsfett CD. Testicle Hazard 5060 LP. What about 5 things that you've been really into from the past year or so? Yeah.
Apripot, that one, Chimes, what was it?
Chimes of Entropy.
That shit, so fucking good.
That's really good.
They're those dudes, and I mean, like, and since then I bought like New Boyfriends and like some other stuff from that dude's label, and it's like, it's so fucking good.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I don't need to describe it, but, and I know I've like posted about it, on like Instagram. I like doing like little reviews, and nice, Eric's got the best reviews, like
Definitely
connected, like historically connected with context of different projects. I'm more like, this is what's happening. These are the sounds. I love it. But yeah, that shit, that tape and that project in general. And I'm just like, I have to, maybe I'll order this shit from you soon, but I need that new CD because that project and those dudes, probably the new Boyfriends thing too, because they're fucking awesome.
Yeah, you need that. You need both of those. You'll like it.
Yeah.
Next one.
Yeah, I don't know much about this project at all. There's a project called Lovers. I think they are out of New York. I don't really know much about them at all. That was, like I said before, like I went to visit, I went to New York in August and went to Dead Gods. Bless those boys. They opened up the shop. We were like going to go do something, but I was like, I've never been to Dead Gods. Yeah. And I think Grant was like, oh, dude, Dan's never been to Dead Gods. And they're like, oh, we got to drop something off anyway or whatever. So I got to like browse the store even though it wasn't open.
Cool.
And I grabbed some stuff. And then I was like, Matt, like, could you recommend some stuff that I wouldn't normally buy or wouldn't see anywhere else? And he just like grabbed some shit off the shelves.
Nice.
This project called Lovers. I can't remember the name. I mean, I have the tape probably right there.
It's not the CDR?
Somewhere.
They did
not the CDR.
I didn't even know they Small Mercies, and I
don't even know anything about that.
For some reason, I assumed it's Justin.
Oh,
but I don't know.
It might be one of those dudes. I literally have no idea. I emailed them. They have a different email.
Okay.
But I have two tapes. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the names, but
it's all good.
The first one I got, and it was just like super blown out, heavy sound, and other things that have been awesome in the last year. I'll probably butcher the name. Octa Renaissance, maybe it's called. I might be butchering the name, but basically HCOD Paul. Yeah. His new project or whatever. Fucking awesome. Nasty postmortem, sound. Yeah. Just gutter synth. It's like perfect atmosphere. Once again, proving that fucking, especially for an American, American crew, obviously he's like super tied to the Euro scene and shit, but, dude's a master, field work. I love that label. Always support that label and like excited for something new, and he's like super cryptic, but his artwork's gotten better and better, illustrations, he's very much like connected with Christian from Alpha Mania and shit. And just obviously that's why they connected, because they look similar, but that shit rules. Basically anything that dude does is awesome, musically. It's like, so like, here's part of my excuse too. And I don't need to make any apologies, but I have so much shit that I buy and don't listen to because it just sits, or it's like, I'm like waiting for something to like be the right mood for it. Yeah. I have stacks of CDs and tapes of like shit I just need to listen to. Yeah. But one thing that came out and I just bought because I was like, oh, this sounds like it'd be cool, and I want to see the new Sediment project that I know Gray's in it. I'm not sure if it's all the Noise Extra people or whatever.
I think it is. I think it's...
Yeah, it might be all three of them, but I think that project is awesome. It's obviously like kind of postmortem sound, really gritty. Mm-hmm. The release I just finished and is like, going to be a CD, whatever, it's called Studies in Advanced Decomposition. Mm-hmm. And so like that stuff, the idea of, decomposition and different states and stuff scientifically and otherwise, like, has been on my mind for years now. And so that Sediment project, even if it's not the same, but it's like very much like sounds of decay and kind of like things like crumbling, and it's like really good. I've got the new tape that they did, the split with I don't even remember the other project. It's like Richard and
Richard and Sean Nuit Rouge. I don't know how to say it in French, but like Nuit Rouge or something like that.
Yeah, that one. So I haven't listened to it. It's like a C90, so I got to buckle up or whatever. That's the other thing too. It's like, I get a CD and it's like, I'm the type of person that likes to sit down and listen to something and just listen and not have to stop. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to put something in my car if I've never listened to it. I don't want to bring it in the car unless it's going to be an hour-long drive, because I'm not going to get the whole thing. Right. And but anyway, so Sediment tape. I don't remember the tape's called. Endorphin?
Yeah, I think so. I have Endorphin. Yeah,
something. Yeah, it's sick.
Yep. One more.
Fuck, I don't know if it's from this year. I got the Bacillus tape that Chondritic put out.
Tape?
And it's CD.
Yeah.
If
It has a funny name.
fucking know.
Like, I hope you get better soon, but you probably won't.
But you won't.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. That CD rules. Also, I think this thing, the fucking variance of concern shit.
Yeah.
You know, like I really like, you know, cool packaging and stuff. And so it's like, you know, like conceptual packaging. And it's like, I have issues. I could probably talk shit about some stuff, but I have issues with the way some packaging is done, where it's like, seems like a fucking gift bag from like Amazon party favor shit. But this is cool. Even if it's like, you know, you like ordered it printed, it was like, this is a really good tape and like has like, you know, cool fold out like inserts and stuff.
Definitely
Am I 5?
very thorough tape packaging wise.
Is that, regardless of where I'm at, I've reached up and like that fucking thing. I'm going to say it wrong. You'd help me. The decombination.
Decombination.
Thank you. I'm not going to repeat that, but signal. Yeah. That one. I mean, I've got the box edition.
Yeah.
That he or you know through Oliver sent me. It's awesome, and I think that the unfortunate thing is not just that version, but I mean that's awesome. I don't have the CD version, but it's like borderline cost prohibitive for probably a lot of people to get access to it. And I don't know if they care, which is fine.
Yeah.
But I think it's cool that there's like a larger edition for anybody who's like eventually going to want it. And it's so good.
Yeah.
And I'm not great about like, you know, it's like, obviously it's like a massive amount of study. And I mean, his stuff in general, like all the art editions, I think it's just great putting that much time and effort and thought into why something is the way it is and how to present it. And that every piece has a reason and a moment. It's not just like, oh, this shit's cool. Yeah. I'm going to throw in a fucking, I'm going to throw in some fucking skulls and a fucking,
he works on that stuff and thinks about it for like a really long time.
Yeah. And it shows. Yeah. And I just think that's like, that's the way, you know, that's the way it is. It's like, I love special packaging. I love weird stuff. You know, I don't have like a ton of it. That'd be like if you ever interview Jim Harris, like that's what you should talk to him about. It's like a fucking episode on the most fucked up weird packaging or whatever. But it's like, you know, whether it's like nice fancy design or it's like, you know, some kind of weird fucked up shit. It's like having stuff that like really connects in, and it's like every piece has a, you know, I don't know. It's like obviously it's a spectrum, but I hate the party favor style.
What is that? What do you mean party favor style?
Like when you go to a fucking place and you get a bag full of like random shit. Like
no, I know what that means, but I mean, what do you mean in terms of noise packaging?
There's some, I mean, like I'm not talking about stickers or whatever, but like there's some labels I think that just throw in a bunch of random shit. It's like, it's all like vaguely related because it's like dark. So it's like, oh, some random like, I don't know. It's like, if you just throw in some stuff, like you went to the store and you got it like 50 of this thing and you threw it in the package to have it be a special edition. Yeah. Or you're like, I ordered 15 of these off of eBay or off of fucking Amazon. And now I'm like going to put them in these art packages and call them a special edition. I'm like, what's special about it? That it's got trinkets?
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, and I'm being like a judgy dick about it, but I think I'm right too. And it's like, I just think it's cool to throw in stickers. I love getting like flyers and shit and like random like flyers for shows and ads and stuff. Yeah. And I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about like when something's like marketed as a special edition or like marked up price wise as a special edition. And it's just some stuff that's like, okay, I guess it's related, but like, how does this make the release more than just the music? Yeah. Which is what I think, you know, I don't need extra shit. I just want to have a deeper connection and like experience with this artwork and this art of a recording. And I don't need that. I'll take a fucking Norelco tape and just rip it. Yeah. Rip it, like play it and enjoy it. But
I think funny, you know, like the special editions where it's just like the regular version, like glued to a metal, like a piece of metal or something like that. Or like, you know, with some sort of mesh.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's sometimes
like the Home Depot, like kind of like screwed on and then it's a special edition. It costs more. It's like,
yeah. I'm not a fan of that. And I think that it looks cool, but it doesn't, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, well, I know you bought that shit for $2.
Yeah.
And you know, like it's more of just like, why?
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
Right.
What's the point?
Yeah.
And so it's like, you know, not to, you know, suck my own dick about it, but you know, with Guts and Red Plastic, even with the auto amputation, like I made an O card for my personal copies, and I made a couple extras and sent them to people, like friends that had bought it, and like I was going to send them, you know, but they're like, oh, I already bought it from you know, from New Forces, and I was like, oh, well, let me send you this because this makes it more. And it's not like, hey, guess what? Here's a picture of some fucked up thing. It's like, this is like partly like gives a window into like why I was doing this and what it is.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you know, a kind of like mass produced thing. I love that Fusty does like these, like, even if some of that stuff might seem to fall into what I'm talking about, I'm really not pointing my finger at Fusty, because he does these big editions, like that fucking, I think I have it up there. I like have stuff that looks cool. The
Alzaga.
Yeah, I'm like, it's the skin graft, all skin graft.
Oh,
one,
yeah.
With the nails and stuff.
Nails.
Like he like soldered the nails together, and it's like little cage. It's like, that's cool as hell. Did he do 10 of them? No, he did like fucking 200 or 100 of them. And I think that's legit as hell, because that's like a massive like undertaking.
Yeah. Jim is crazy. I think Jim is crazy. I mean, I gotta respect Jim's. I don't know what's up with Jim's aesthetic. I mean, I think he knows it's like he does his stuff is ugly as fuck. Like, like it's just like, holy shit, like that
trash label from a trash garbage.
Yeah.
Wasn't that the ad for
he wrote that.
The ad for Fusty. I mean, of course. Yeah, no, I imagined that he wrote it, and I was like, okay, the top advertisements on the White Centipede podcast, obviously the Chinese restaurant, and then that. You know, I just died because it's, you know, garbage.
But his aesthetic is so. I mean, his aesthetic is so unique in some way, because it's so over the top and so trash but he goes so hard with it. He goes so full on with everything, and you know, every release he'll go full on with the crazy ass packaging. Yeah, but it's still and some of it's like, it's still like not done with it. It's not like fully refined, you know, which I think is really charming. Like, it's not like he'll make sure like every like thing is well rounded and everything like that. He's like, no, he'll like just throw a piece of like whatever into the you know, it's like it has a totally different extra level of like grossness almost, you know, just with like how and he's he's very much like obsessed with the study of things and, you know, like the concepts and stuff. So sometimes it is kind of random, and I know sometimes he has like the editions are limited by like the materials that he has. And I found some not radon test kits, but like radon educational materials, VHS tapes, and like in a big kit in my classroom that I was going to throw away. And I was like, oh shit, I should message Jim. And I did. And he was like, yeah, send them. But I had to throw them away. I had to get rid of them. But yeah, that's like, it was like, that's his style. It's like, it's super cool. But yeah, I don't know. So it's like, there's like a balance. And I mean, I know I'm being like, maybe I'm not even coming up with a concrete thought, but it's one of those things where I just, I don't know. I don't need more shit. I just like, I want something that makes sense. Yeah. Or is just like abstract art. You know, it's like, if it's really fucked up and weird, that's cool. If it's just like bolted on and $20 and it's like, you know, okay, like, okay, you know. Right. For sure. But yeah, packaging is like special packaging, you know, art packaging is, you know, super cool. And I think it makes things, enriches the experience of having physical copies, you know. It's like, especially with stuff now, it's like, I use Bandcamp. I don't use a Bandcamp for myself. I don't know if I will, but you know, it's like, Hospital does their fancy expensive editions, but now they have, I don't buy much Hospital stuff anyway, but they at least have like digital versions of things. And it's like, okay, well, now it's not some prohibitive thing. Like, if you don't want to spend $50, you don't get this. Right. You know, they're at least like, yeah, you could buy this, you know, the sounds, or you could have this fancy Easel edition. Yeah. That's how it should be. Yeah. I agree. I mean, and like I said, I don't use Bandcamp, but I think that especially in that situation, it's like kind of the way to go. Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, before we wrap things up, tell me about what's next for Body Carve? You've referenced it a few times that you have a CD coming up soon, but tell me about exactly what's going on there.
Oh yeah, I've got I finished a CD. It was something I was recording basically from 2019 Summer Scum, have stuff from that, set basically. And I finished it last summer. And so it was just basically, over 2 years of stuff. And it's anyway, that'll be a CD. I think it's safe to say it'll be on Chondritic. And Gray's been a huge supporter of mine. And that's like I said before, it's full circle, coming up on the Tronics board and Chondritic board and stuff. And it's so I'm pretty excited about that and happy to work with him. And so I'm excited about that. That's going to be, I don't know, soonish, sometime this year.
Cool.
Maybe in the next few months. I don't know exactly, but that's done. There's a reissue kind of planned. I still need to work on it, but reissue. I've got some red plastic for CD. Possibly some extras as far as because I recorded those tracks and then I did I probably had of the tracks that are on the tape, I have 3 or 4 alternate versions of each one because I recorded them as long tracks. I didn't track that. It's all recorded as one take basically. Sure. So I recorded multiple versions and picked the best. So that'll be probably this year. I might do another split/collab with Slit Throats. There's just different stuff. I mean, it's hard to know. I mean, there's nothing super concrete. I don't have a bunch of things at the plant.
Sure.
I kind of, I'm just getting back into stuff but yeah, that's it. I mean, play shows, that'd be cool to play, but mostly I'm just happy to kind of get back to recording. I've been working on some conceptual stuff and reading some books about some fucked up stuff and that I've kind of been thinking about for a long time. And it's not fucked up, but you know what I mean? There's some, we'll see if it comes out or happens, but yeah. Right. And then as far as label stuff, I've got working on some tapes, hoping to get, I don't ever plan to be a super busy label, but just a couple things, Pain Apparatus and Suktig from, however you pronounce that. It's a German, I think, from Minneapolis, power electronics, kind of weird stuff. But
what's it called? Say it again.
Suktig.
Suchtig.
Yep.
Süchtig.
But thank you.
It means addicted.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I never Google translated. Makes sense though.
That's a project from Minneapolis?
Yeah. One of the guys from Controlled Opposition.
Okay, cool.
And yeah. Sweet. Good dude, talented guy, kind of low key about stuff, but he's just got some good shit. So, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of it for me, and mostly just, doing my thing, listening to my tapes finally. And, got to buy that fucking Opera Pop CD.
Yeah, for sure. Great. All right. Well, I appreciate it. Great to talk to you.
Yeah, good talking to you, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for sharing, and talk to you soon. Take care.
Yeah, later.
Bye. Thanks again for tuning into White Centipede Noise Podcast. Head over to the Patreon for more, including private episodes of Noise on the Run, exclusive photos, video, and audio related to the show, and discounts at the White Centipede Noise mail order. Your support is extremely appreciated and vital to keep the show going.